All right, everybody, welcome back to part two of section two. Not a whole lot to go through today, but it does get a little complicated, especially with all the different Supreme Court cases we will be talking about. These Supreme Court cases we talk about today are going to really shape the United States and the way it is today and how people are handled throughout the criminal justice system and why things kind of are the way they are today. So, to start off, the United States Supreme Court becomes more liberal or willing to accept changes during the 1960s under the leadership of Chief Justice Earl Warren. So, this is a picture of the Supreme Court in the 1960s, and as you can tell, they are very old and very, very white. So, first case we've already talked about a little bit will be Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. This outlawed segregation in public schools. Now, we've spent quite a bit of time on this already. Now, another court case affecting schools would be Engel v. Vitale, as it was called. In this case, the court ruled that religious prayer in public schools was unconstitutional because it violated the principle of separation of church and state. In other words, schools, especially public, only, well, let me rephrase that, not all schools, only public schools are restricted to not forcing students to say prayers in class or during school hours. It has to be voluntary in public schools because of the separation of church and state. And this principle is established in Engel v. Vitale. And so the court will also concentrate on protecting the constitutional rights of the individual rather than the power of the state, or in instance, the government. So these next four cases that we talk about will have huge impacts on how the government handles individual rights. First case is Mapp v. Ohio, which took place in 1961. This established the exclusionary rule, where evidence seized illegally could not be used against you in court. So, in the case of Mapp v. Ohio, the Ohio police went into Mapp's house and had a warrant to search for certain items. And they're basically looking for an illegal gambling ring, is what they're doing. And in the closet, they found a locked chest. And when the police grabbed it and broke it open, they found other illegal materials in that locked chest, which was not covered in the search warrant. Therefore, when they arrested Matt because of this new illegal contraband they found in the locked chest, they tried to prosecute her because of it. Now, in the court case of Matt v. Ohio, the court rules that, well, they couldn't use this illegally seized evidence because it wasn't in the warrant. Therefore, they cannot accuse her of this crime, and therefore she was let go. So that's the exclusionary rule. Evidence seized illegally cannot be used against you in court. Gideon v. Wainwright, which took place in 1963, says that suspects in criminal cases who can't afford a lawyer have the right to free legal aid. Gideon was a rather not well educated individual in Florida and was accused of breaking and entering into a store, which he was guilty of. And he was not given an attorney during this process. And because he was not given an attorney, um, he had no way to really defend himself. So Gideon becomes a basically writes his own appeal and everything to the Supreme Court, starts studying law while he's in jail, and eventually, when his court case gets to the Supreme Court, um, he is deemed that the Florida law that said that he was not required to have an attorney was ruled unconstitutional, and therefore, because of Gideon v. Wainwright, everybody has the right to an attorney now. Even if you cannot afford one, one will be provided for you. Then we have Escobedo v. Illinois, which takes place in 1964, where an individual has the right to an attorney while being questioned. So Escobedo is arrested for murder, and during questioning, he's basically tricked into admitting that he did it, even though he really didn't. So Escobedo arrested for murder, and the entire time he never had a lawyer present. If he had had a lawyer present, well, then he would be basically innocent at this point. because you never would have gotten to those questions. So that's why you have the right to an attorney while being questioned. Finally, Miranda v. Arizona. This one might sound a little familiar because of the Miranda part. So Miranda v. Arizona takes place in 1964, and it says that suspects must be informed of their rights before being questioned. Miranda was never informed of his rights before, as he was being arrested and before he was questioned. Therefore, any evidence they obtained during questioning before he was read his rights is inadmissible in court, or in other words, it can't be used. So, because of Miranda v. Arizona, we now have what we know as the Miranda rights. And all these different court cases kind of um, go with the Miranda rights. So, you know, that one thing that should you ever be arrested, you might hear where it goes along the lines of you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney if one cannot be provided for you. If you cannot afford one, one will be provided for you. Do you understand your rights as they have been read to you? That is the Miranda statement read by all police officers as they arrest somebody. So all of those things in that Miranda statement that I just cited um, comes from these court cases. So all these cases limit the power the government has and gave more power back to the people, which is a huge, huge thing for them and a huge win. The next couple court cases we talk about will be a little bit more confusing. So courts also ruled on apportionment or the distribution slash dividing of legislative body seats among electoral districts. I have a video posted in the description. You might want to watch that video before you get to the next couple points. So good time to pause it and go to that. So in the case of Reynolds v. Sims in 1961, unequal voting districts was a violation of the 14th Amendment, which guarantees equal protection under the law. In other words, if voting districts aren't equal, then um, basically your equal protection of the law portion is violated, and so it goes against the 14th Amendment. That's why that is now there. And the more important one, though, will be Baker v. Carr, which takes place in 1962, where the court declares one person, one vote, or that congressional districts had to be apportioned or divided so that they are equal in population. That's why it's so important that everybody completes the census so we know what exactly different populations are in different regions, allowing the districts to be properly aligned. And also, it bases your legislation strength for your state on this and the members of Congress you have. So, um, the big reason why these are important is this is to prevent a political party in power from drawing district lines to their advantage. Now, this is the point where you really need to watch that video because it goes in way more depth than I can on here. Otherwise, I will just confuse you guys. But the very important case, more important of the two cases right here, is Baker versus Carr, where they declare one person, one vote. Now, a little bit more on gerrymandering. If you look here at this far left chart right here, okay, so out of 50 people, 60% of them are blue, 40% are red. Okay, so it's 3-to-2 ratio. Perfect representation is identified right here in this picture, where you'd have 3 blue districts, 2 red districts. All right, makes sense, right? It's equal representation. Now, something to note, all districts have to be compact and contiguous. Okay, so are these compact? Well, not necessarily, but are they contiguous? Yes, they are. In other words, this district right here, you can't just draw a line here and separate it into two. So, second one is an example of gerrymandering right here. It's compact, yes, and they are contiguous, but they're unfair because if you look, the results would be 5 blue districts, 0 red districts. So, because they draw them with a majority of blue in each one, that is an unfair drawing. Now, 3 is probably the best example that we have today of neither compact nor fair. So this district right here starts here, goes all the way down, and ends here. It is a blue district. Same with this one is also a blue district right here because they only have one red. Okay. Now, remember our ratio is 60% blue, 40 red. However, as this ends up, it shows 60% red representation with 40% blue representation because of how these 3 districts located on this left side are drawn with majority of red squares in each one. So those are neither compact nor fair. Two is compact but unfair, and one is perfect representation. In an ideal situation, you would have number one every time. However, because of politics and people looking out for their best interest, you get a lot of number two and number three. Another example, the state of Michigan, for example. All right, northern Michigan, all right, it's a huge area, not a lot of people live there. The thumb region, which drops down into these other counties here, could be a little misrepresentation. Perfect representation for thumb would probably wrap around Bay City and come up north a little bit more. But the main area to look is Detroit. Okay, if you look at Oakland County, all right, that's compact contiguous. Okay, Macomb County, Shelby Township, all right, compact and contiguous. Novi region starts here down in Wayne County, goes up and around all this and ends up here in Birmingham, cutting out Pontiac. Pontiac is joined here in District 14 with Detroit that all runs all the way down here. Yes, that is connected. And if you look at District 13 here, all the way wrapped around, not really super compact. 14, not compact. 9, not compact. 11, sort of compact, but not really. 12 is pretty much compact. So what they did in Detroit is basically divided the area up based on racial status and how people vote. So is it really fair? No. Does it work for now? I guess, but remember, it is considered gerrymandering. And there's actually a Supreme Court case going on right now for the state of Michigan with gerrymandering. Now, the effects of Lyndon Johnson's Great Society program. After early success and support, criticism of the Great Society grows. New programs that raised hopes but disappointed many. Some thought that there was too much tax money being spent on the poor. Some thought there was too much power being put in the hands of the federal government. And despite these criticisms, the number of people living in poverty would be cut in half during the 1960s and 1970s because of these Great Society programs. Well, it goes to show you can't make everybody happy. Lyndon Johnson and his Great Society programs will be considered effective and work very well. However, the Great Society programs will start to fall as eventually funds for the Great Society will be diverted to support the increasing war in Vietnam. So this is where I leave you for today. Please make sure you watch that video on gerrymandering that I have in the description, as well as complete the Google form attached to the description. Other than those couple things, no homework other than that tonight. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or hop in on a Zoom session, which is from 11 to 12. The links for that you can find in my um, contact information page. So, once again, if you have any questions, please contact me.